Today, we're going to talk about coping with COVID-19 anxiety. CBT explains how anxiety affects us emotionally, physically, and behaviorally. There's a five-element model in CBT. So basically, step one, bad stuff happens. This is the situation or the triggering event. Now, when we talk about the mind-body connection, we hear a lot about that the last while. So we know that how we think will affect what happens to us physically. We talk about stress-related symptoms and illness, things like ulcers and IBS. Our thoughts also, however, affect our emotions. So our interpretation of situations is really going to affect how we feel. So if I tell myself something bad is going to happen, I will feel anxious. If I tell myself that somebody's treating me unfairly, I'm likely to feel angry. It follows then that how we look at things will also affect what we do, our behavior. If I'm scared, I will run. If I'm angry, I will lash out or do a cold silence. What we think affects how we feel both emotionally and physically and what we do. That's really the key thesis of CBT. When we talk about the fear reaction, we talk about the fight-flight reaction. Fear triggers that fight-flight or freeze reaction, which is a response to threat. It's a way to protect ourselves from danger, and it's a key to our survival. What actually happens in the fight or flight response? Two systems exist within us. There is the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. I roll my eyes because I usually forget which is which myself, and I have to look at it. So when we are relaxed, our bodies have engaged the parasympathetic nervous system, also known as the rest and digest system, which is concerned with our long-term survival. However, when our body feels threatened, it kicks in with the sympathetic nervous system. This is the fight or flight response for immediate short-term survival. The sympathetic nervous system is primitive, and it enables our bodies to do what they need to do in order to move away quickly, flee, or to fight. It pumps adrenaline into the system, which makes our hearts beat faster. We sweat, we tense our muscles, we have trouble breathing, our stomach gets upset, we have urgency to go to the bathroom, those kind of things. This is exactly what a panic attack feels like in your body. In a good article recently in the Toronto Star on March 20th, 2020, the writer Steve McKinley makes a reference to a conversation he had with Steve Jurdans, professor of psychology at the University of Toronto, Scarborough campus, noting that when the threat is dealt with, our bodies can go back to its rest and digest mode. But in the case of the pandemic, the threat is continual, with no obvious thing to be done about it and little chance to escape exposure. So there's nothing to fight and nowhere to flee. He says further, so many of us feel like our bodies are a bit energized a lot of the time, and we're compelled to do something, but we really don't know what that thing is. I've told friends recently, as this has been going on, I feel unsettled a lot of the time, kind of restless, hard to get stuff done, hard to concentrate. They've told me they are experiencing the same thing as well. The problem with being in a constant state of fight or flight then, having that red light danger switch on all the time, constantly over a long period of time, is it causes cortisol to be released by the adrenal glands, which temporarily suppresses our immune system. So over time, we have a compromised immune system, which can make us even more vulnerable to illness. This is why we need to find ways to cope differently for our own health, physical and mental. So what's the freeze part of the fight, flight, freeze reaction? Some animals survive by using camouflage. They blend in with their environment, like a lizard in the desert, the color of sand, or herons standing in the reeds. They stop moving in order for predators to not see them. Same for us. When we don't know what to do, sometimes we freeze. We're paralyzed. And it's really hard to fight or to run from a microscopic, invisible virus. So we just stop and shut down. Now, with the pandemic, we're being told to isolate. When people are anxious under normal circumstances, they tend to isolate. This is a symptom of an anxiety disorder. They hide in bed, they avoid seeing people, they don't go out. Being isolated is a great opportunity to get stuff done. We've certainly heard that in the media as well. Things you've been putting off, here's your chance. You don't have to go to work. And some folks are certainly doing this. But anxious responses in this crisis situation mean that some folks are isolating beyond what's advised. They've stopped communicating with friends and family. They are no longer cleaning or doing tasks around the house or even bathing. I find myself that I have this sense of lethargy and lack of motivation, as I mentioned, without deadlines or normal schedule. And that was happening already as I left full-time work at the beginning of this year. So I'd already had a sense of being a little bit at sea, but the forced social isolation has increased that. Without deadlines, it can cause us to think, it doesn't really matter what I do. Why do I have to get out of my pajamas? Nobody's coming over. Or why do I have to even clean up? Nobody will see me. Nobody will see my place. And some people don't even enjoy their own company. They don't feel good being alone. Some people cope by keeping too busy so that they don't have to feel the loneliness or the anxiety. Forced isolation can also highlight the lack of supports that some people have if they don't have many friends or social supports or work supports. This is where we can run into the overlap between anxiety and depression, when people start to feel lethargic, fatigued, powerless, and ultimately hopeless. The fight-flight response is built into us for survival, but it is not meant to be a sustained state.